Good morning, episode 1 of the new off-grid cabin build, which we will be living in full time. I built this cabin over the winter last winter, and this is what we will be staying in while we build our new place. This cabin has everything we need to live comfortably. We got a shower and everything in the camper here, and I'll show you where the new cabin's gonna sit. Right now I have the wall tent set up. This is our temporary storage unit until we get our place dried in. So there we go, we got all of our stuff here. All the things that are most important are up front, so they're easy to get to. And this right here is where the new cabin is gonna sit. So it's a nice naturally cleared out area overlooking this little field. A lot of nice pine trees around, a lot of younger ones that are gonna grow up nice. I'll thin out some of these little birch trees and keep the spruce and balsam. First thing I'm gonna do this morning is weed whip this, knock this down a little bit more just so it's easier to work with. After that, we will get our foundation pads in place. That's the goal for today, is to have the entire foundation done. So let's get started. So I started laying out some pads. So on top of these pads, there will be 3 beams that hold up the cabin. So I measured out my distances, took a measurement from corner to corner, diagonal measurements, and I know I'm square right now, so I'm where I need to be. I have 6 pads in place. They're not leveled out with each other yet, but they're where they need to sit. So basically the pads that I have in place, these are the very ends of the beams. So it's 40 foot long is how long this cabin's gonna be. So from the edge of this pad to the edge of that pad is just under 40 feet because I'm gonna skirt this and I want the pads to be tucked underneath the skirting around the perimeter of the cabin. But this is most of the figuring. So all the thinking and getting this squared up and everything is kind of most of the work. It's a little bit tedious. So I'll pound a stake on the end here of this pad and the pad down there. I'll run a string line right down the center of the pads. And then that way I can position my pads so that the beam lands right on the center of all of them. Got the first row done. So 6 pads will sit underneath each beam for a total of 18 total pads. So I'll take my string line, move it over to this row, and we'll do that one. So all pads are in place right now. They're all sitting where they need to be. They're all level both ways, but I need to build them all up so that they're level with each other. To do that, I'll use concrete blocks, and there's tons of them on this property. When we bought it, there was an old trailer house here that had a bunch of cinder blocks underneath it, and then there was like a pile of like 100 of them, so might as well use them here. And it kind of works out perfect too, because a lot of them are different thicknesses, which will come in handy when it comes to leveling these pads. So I'm starting to bring these up to level. So I'm starting on the lower corner, and then I'll level out the rest of the pads from there. So this is how much room I'll have underneath the cabin. This will have a crawl space, so after I get done doing the beams and we get this place built, I'll skirt around the entire cabin. So this will be enclosed, so you won't see these pads, but I'll have access to them anytime I need to do any maintenance. But this is really all there is to this. You know, I just start my low corner. I got a board here that's long enough to reach each pad. And then, so now that I know this one is the same height as this one, you know, I can level this pad, and keep working my way around, and they'll all be level with each other, which is what I want. There we go. These 3 pads are leveled out with each other. Right on. There we go. All the footings are done. They're all evenly spaced, they're all level with each other, and they are square, so we are ready to build our beams and set those on top of these pads. Good morning, it's the next day. I'll take you over to the foundation pads there and I'll talk about a few things and I'll show you the plans of what our new cabin is going to look like. So I've talked about this type of foundation at length on this channel. I've built several cabins this same way, but you always get new people that watch the videos that haven't seen that stuff before. So I'll kind of talk about why I did this and what the pros and cons are of it. So first I'll tell you a story about when I built my first ever cabin in Alaska. I had never built anything before, didn't know what I was doing, and I was just stressing out about the foundation because it was pretty intimidating for me. I didn't know really what to do. And where I was building in Alaska is permafrost, so you can't go below the frost line or anything. And what people do is they build right on top of the ground there. You put your place up off the ground a little bit so you can get under there if you need to, and that way you can adjust the foundation blocks down the line if there's frost heave or whatever. And there was this guy that lived out in the area where I was building, and he had been living there full time in the bush. You know, this was remote, and had a little cabin there. I'd go over and kind of pick his brain when I was clearing land and cutting the logs for my cabin. And I would talk to him about it, and finally he's like, you are way overthinking this. And this guy knew his stuff. You know, he had lived in the Yukon, lived in Alaska in cabins and the whole thing, and kind of looked up to him because he was doing all the stuff that I wanted to do. Yeah, finally he's like, yeah, just go out in the woods, cut some stumps or cut some sections of logs, set them right on the ground, level them out, and build your cabin right on top of those. And then of course I had all kinds of questions because this was all new to me, you know, like what about frost heave? What about this? And aren't those stumps gonna rot at some point? And he said, yeah, way down the line, they'll probably rot eventually. And he's like, when they do, lift the cabin up a little bit, kick the stump out, cut a new stump, and put the new one underneath. It'll take you 5 minutes. And I just never really realized that, things can be that simple. So that's what I did, and yeah, it worked out fine. So you can build right on top of this and leave it, and it would be just fine if you didn't have any skirting or anything. You know, you may get some frost heave here and there, but over time, if you ever need to adjust any of the pads, you know, you just lift up the cabin a little bit and readjust them and you're back in business. However, with this cabin, once I'm done framing it and everything, I'll skirt around it. So all these pads will be tucked underneath the skirting. You will not see them. That skirting will be insulated and there won't be any frost or anything getting to these pads. It'll be thawed out underneath the cabin year round. So the way this will go is there'll be 3 beams on each row that'll hold up the floor, which will hold up the whole cabin. So picture this as the beam. You know, it'll be beefier than this. I'm just using this as an example. But the beam will sit right on top, right on the center of all these pads. And then my floor joist will sit on top of these beams. So my floor joist will extend out with the beam. The beam will be thicker than this. So it'll probably, the edge of it will probably be about right there. And then my floor joist will just extend just a little bit past the pads like this. And then I'll have skirting all the way around the cabin. Also, this cabin will be anchored down, so I'll have anchors into the ground, and then it's like a metal strap that'll get tied around the beams and anchored down to the earth. So this cabin will be tied down securely. And by having it up off the ground and having a crawl space, I can get underneath and I'll have access to all this stuff anytime. The cabin that we've lived in the last 5 years was done this exact same way, and I haven't had to adjust any of the pads. In fact, they're all still sitting level. You put a level on them and they're same way they were when I put them in about 5 years ago. But over time, if any of these ever do start, you know, twisting or shifting, it's not a hard job at all to put a couple bottle jacks underneath that beam, lift it up just a little bit, and yeah, re-level out your pads and you're back in business. But that's pretty much the gist of it. You know, it's simple. You don't have to pour any concrete, and this just works. I would not keep doing it this way if I didn't have good results, but I've never had any problems with any of the cabins I've built or any outbuildings. And yeah, if you have it up high enough, you can adjust it if you ever need to. So it doesn't need to be a real complicated process. And by having the skirting insulated, it'll be thawed out year round. There won't be any frost getting to these pads. You know, a lot of people will just float their cabins right on top of these and not anchor them down. That's how ours was for a couple years before I added those anchors, and it was just fine. But having those anchors in place definitely adds a little peace of mind if you get a big storm that comes through. And when you look up the holding power of those anchors, they're legit. So I feel pretty good about having them on. So it's all about simplicity, you know, and yeah, you're not pouring concrete with this. You can just get these pads at Menards or any box store. And then I kind of had an advantage because I had all these cinder blocks and blocks already here from the previous mobile home that used to sit here. Well, this is what we're building. That's the front view. That's to scale. It's 16 by 40 with a full loft upstairs, the full length of it. You'll be able to stand up there, plenty of headroom. So the front door would be right here, and you walk into a kitchen. So the whole front part of the cabin is a kitchen. And then there's a little hallway right here, bathroom with washer, dryer, shower, everything, full bathroom. On the other side of that, this is a pantry. Sierra's always wanted a pantry, like a walk-in one. So we're gonna do that right here. And then this will be the living room area with sliding doors right here. So bring in a lot of light and we'll have a nice view out this way. And then the back part of this will be Sierra and I's master bedroom. And then we will have stairs that go up into the loft, and there'll be a really good sized bedroom in the back and the front. And then in the middle will kind of be a commons area slash, you know, living room upstairs, kind of an area for the kids to hang out. So pretty simple. And then if we ever do want more room, we can just add on a little addition to the cabin if we need to. But pretty nice to have this done. Next video, I'll have the beams on. I'll probably do, I don't know if I'll make the beams its own video or if I'll do the beams and the floor its own. We'll see. But I'll be starting that in the next couple days. But other than that, yeah, that's a simple foundation for a cabin. We're gonna thin out some of these trees around the building site as well. That's kind of the next step. I just wanted to get the footprint in here, get it set where it's gonna be sitting, and then now I can kind of thin out the trees I want to. I'll keep a lot of these pines because I like them. And I don't know if you can see all these. There's a ton of them in here that you'll be able to see a lot better once I thin out some of these little birch and popple. There'll be a lot of windows in this place too, so we'll have a nice view out this way once I thin out some trees. Nice view out this way. Watch that moose or bear walk through the yard. But that's it, that's step one. Now we get to start doing some framing, the fun stuff. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.